Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. This is one of my favorite types of shows because I have the pleasure and the honor and I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to interview so many authors of so many wonderful books. When I was very young, for me, reading was an escape. I was able to escape into other realities, other dimensions, other worlds in many cases, and it was a place where I found myself, where I could be safe and secure and have adventures, and it was a great, wonderful gift when I finally learned how to read. I think I was all of 3 or 4 years old. Later on, reading became almost a necessity as far as school went, though I didn't think much of the books that I read. But since college and 2 master's degrees and a lot of extra years, I have always brought my love of reading along with me wherever I've gone, whatever I've been involved in. And since school, I have found that reading has supplied me with wisdom, with insight, with knowledge, with challenges. I have returned to a great love of my life, which is reading, and I'm very fortunate in that I read very, very fast. So I'm able to go through a lot of books in a very short period of time. And, when I become obsessed, it's really a little frightening of the number of books that I will stack up and read my way through. Recently, I met someone who had a whole bunch of authors that he knew that had written books that were right up my alley, which is, of course, the esoteric and the metaphysical. And so I've had a most exciting couple of months here where I've been able to plow through books and then talk to the people that put them together, that wrote them, that gathered the knowledge, and that I was so thirsty for. Tonight's guest is a very unique and amazing man. He's a gifted author with deep interest in exoteric and esoteric aspects of the symbolism in today's reality. And I have to tell you that his books have opened my eyes dramatically. The first one into the fact that I don't know as much as I'd like to know about the Masonic order and their rituals and their philosophies. And the second book, which is the one we're going to talk most about, is Cinema Symbolism. And I don't think that I will ever look at a movie the same way twice. He has opened my eyes to a lot of things that I really never considered before and I didn't look for. And that's what I think is so phenomenal about him. His first book is The Royal Arch of Enoch, and that's the Impact of Masonic Ritual, Philosophy, and Symbolism. And it was his first book, and it was a product of 20 years of research. And then he published his second book, Cinema Symbolism, A Guide to Esoteric Imagery in Popular Movies. And he's currently writing a a second addition to that because there are so many more movies to go into. And he's also writing another book on, it's called A Pact with the Devil, the story of Elizabeth Burnblack and her involvement with the occult, black magic, and the dark arts. So he's prolific. He goes over an amazing spectrum of material to use, and I have to say, I have been so educated by reading his book and so surprised, and I have to go back and relook at all these movies to recognize the symbolism that was there, and I never even noticed it, but maybe a part of me did, and it was just a matter of my opening my eyes to it and bringing it into my consciousness. So I want to welcome you, Robert, here to the show. You are an amazing man, and I'm so thrilled to be able to talk with you about your books.
Well, thank you, Barbara, for having me on the Nightlight. I really appreciate being here. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and it's my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to tonight's show.
Me too. I just and also, I consider myself well educated, and yet, that's I guess one of the biggest stumbling blocks of being intelligent, thinking you're intelligent, because you are suddenly reminded of the fact that you're not, and that's what your book did to me. So.
Well, thank you. That's very flattering. I really appreciate hearing praise like that. It makes the journey of writing them. When I hear things like that, it makes the journey of writing them, both books, of course, all worthwhile. When I hear things like that, that's what makes it worthwhile for me.
Well, it's I've been in this field for 50 years, so I've read a lot, I've experienced a lot, I've done a lot, I've written myself, and to suddenly have something as casual as the movies brought up, and of course I've seen every movie that you had written about, which was really a cool thing for me, and yet you saw greater depth in them, you saw symbology in them. What blew my mind so much was that we actually are pre-programmed for archetypes. And that is something that it never occurred to me.
Well, that's right. When you're talking about things like the archetypes, these, of course, come off the tarot cards, astrology, mythology, religion, magic, sorcery. This is all part of what, Carl Gustav Jung called the collective unconscious. And this is just, things that are just so ingrained in our unconscious psyche as a whole. That we're not immune from them, and these movie makers and filmmakers incorporate these images and these ideas and these symbolisms very subtly in movies to really impact our unconscious mind, our conscious mind. And you can even make an argument in some cases, and I do in the book, that even the filmmakers may not even be aware that they're doing it. In my experience in the research, they are very aware of what they are doing, and this material is definitely intentionally placed. It's just too overwhelming to write it off as coincidence. But you can, it's definitely in there, and the whole book, Cinema Symbolism, just documents, this mythology, this astrology, numerology, Hebrew Kabbalah, mysticism, sorcery, just these, real arcane, themes, the archetypes. You'll find these in cinema from time to time. Especially in characters who are very well known. These characters are very archetypical. And again, they really, these are the characters we always remember, the Darth Vaders of the world. These are the characters that really just stick out in cinematic history. The movie makers are definitely aware that of this material and are placing it in there. Sometimes exoterically, but a lot of times very esoterically beneath the celluloid surface is the best way for me to describe it.
Well, yeah, and it I think what really blew my mind was when I realized that when we're talking things like Alice in Wonderland and The Wizard of Oz, and then of course all the Star Wars and all of the Matrix series and the Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's almost as though they had a template, and they knew that we were programmed to that template. And the closer they held to that template, the more popular their movie would be.
That's absolutely correct. When you're talking about things like the Matrix or the Star Wars movies or the Lord of the Rings, this is, of course, these movies incorporate numerous elements of the monomyth of Joseph Campbell. This is the hero's journey, the solar mythology, the astrological journey of the sun. You will find this in modern religion, such as Christianity and Judaism, the redemptive savior figure, the Christ archetype. That this is Luke Skywalker, Neo, and Frodo Baggins. They turn up in those films. And again, like you said, this is very popular. This is a very those are three big main movie series that use it. It's not the only one. Oh, they're not the only ones. But yeah, that's a very popular archetype. I'm trying to think. Those three. 12 Monkeys with Bruce Willis also incorporates the same symbolism, and Alice in Wonderland and the other one you mentioned, Wizard of Oz, and you can throw the Lovely Bones into that as well, the Alice Sebold novel that was made into a movie by Peter Jackson a few years ago. The concept of the Gnostic journey, self-awakening, self-realization. What I describe in the book is basically Gnostic Ascensio, climbing the ladder of enlightenment. You'll find it, and when you break these movies down with this mythology, armed with the mythology, you'll find a lot of parallels going on within these movies, and the same powerful themes, somewhat reoccurring again and again.
Yeah, and I never would have put Alice in Wonderland in the same grouping as the Lord of the Rings or the Matrix or whatever, and yet it all fits now. And also, though, a great many of the authors of all of these books had Masonic training or were in the Masons or had knowledge of the Masonic symbolism.
Right. A lot of the authors were very, that's very true. Some of them were Freemasons. Some of them were very influenced by the esoteric. You look at people who wrote, like James Bond's author, Ian Fleming, was heavily influenced by Aleister Crowley, who was this very mystical Freemason, more well-known through his associations with these other secret societies known as the OTO and the Golden Dawn. Lewis Carroll, real name Charles Dodson, the Christchurch mathematician, who wrote Alice in Wonderland, very familiar with mysticism. He was a member of a society that studied mysticism and the occult. Its name escapes me right now, but very influenced by this material. George Lucas, who is, of course, behind Star Wars, has openly admitted having read and being influenced by Joseph Campbell. Same thing with the guys who created the Matrix films. The Wachowski brothers, again, the Matrix is just, and the whole trilogy is just overloaded with Gnostic and numerological and occult symbols. Bram Stoker, Dracula, he was a member of the Golden Dawn. So yeah, you will definitely find, even when in the concepts, where the movie is based on a novel. A lot of times the author was heavily influenced by the occult or the mystical or the numinous, in various ways.
Oh gosh, yes, and with the Wizard of Oz especially.
Oh yes.
And if you would, I know I read the book, so I know what you're talking about, but a lot of my audience hasn't. So, one of the things that I found fascinating was why don't we take the Wizard of Oz and sort of break it down a little bit so they will see where the symbolism is and understand what was the message that was subliminally being given to people while they were being entertained by a fairy tale.
Right. Well, The Wizard of Oz was written by a man named L. Frank Baum, and he lived at the turn of the last century. This would have been the turn of the 20th century. And he was a member of something known as Theosophy, or the Theosophical Society. And this was not necessarily what I would go so far as a secret society. It was more of a philosophical society founded by a Russian mystic named Madame Helena Blavatsky. She's the main force behind this. What it was in a nutshell was, and just so I don't dwell on this too long, but you should have some background on this. It's basically neo-Gnosticism was what Theosophy was. It was very wary of the Abrahamic faiths of things like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. It believed in self-awakening, self-consciousness. The divine spark was within you. It was up to you to find it for yourself. And Baum, who wrote Wizard of Oz, incorporates many theosophical doctrines in the Wizard of Oz. In the Wizard of Oz, there's really three layers of symbolism going on inside the book and inside the movie. The first one is what you would just call, and I'm just going to go over this briefly, you would call your profane explanation. This is just this magical adventure about this girl who gets whisked away to this magical land, has an adventure, defeats an evil witch, which gets the broom, goes back to the wizard, gets a wish from Glinda the Good Witch, and returns home. End of story. This is what you would call your profane explanation. But then you have two real deeper levels going on in this movie. One is the theosophical theme, the Gnostic theme, and the other is the political allegory. And this ties into when Baum lived. And I'll start with the political, and then I'll go to the other one. I've been asked this before, and it usually works best this way. But with the Wizard of Oz, you have the entire, basically on a political level, on a socio-economic level, what you are watching is a sort of a duplication or a symbolic interpretation of the American political economic system from around 1896 to around 1910. And I want to say Wizard of Oz was published in that time frame. I'd have to pull it up. I want to say maybe even 1900. So it may predate 1910. But you have a lot of things going on where you have the tornado coming in, taking the farm away from the little girl. This symbolizes the Depression of 1896. Where where a lot of farmers lost their farms to foreclosure. You have the Wizard of Oz character, who is the 25th President of the United States, William McKinley. When Dorothy goes to Oz, she takes the yellow brick road to go to the Emerald City. The yellow brick road is the gold standard, and McKinley wanted to use the gold standard to back paperback money or greenbacks. This is why the Wizard of Oz dwells in Emerald City, symbolizing paper money. You have the three travelers that Dorothy encounters are, again, symbolic of the American farmer, who is the scarecrow, the Tin Man, who is the laborer, and the Cowardly Lion, who is either, you can switch him out with either Eugene Debs or Williams Jennings Bryan, who was McKinley's Democratic challenger in both elections. Debs was the head of the Socialist Party. In a nutshell, they were allowed bark but no bite. Hence, they were cowardly lions with no real threat to McKinley. The Tin Man is the American laborer. Many laborers in the Depression of 1896 were laid off, and you'll see this in the movie where he's immobile, he can't move, he's in a state of dormancy, and it takes oil to get him moving again. This symbolizes J.P. Morgan Standard Oil Company and the Rockefeller Standard Oil Company, or the oil companies in general, which put the American laborer back to work. So the laborer, the Tin Man, gets moving by oil. You'll find that in the movie as well. Then you have the whole thing going on in the movie where they go to meet the wizard, and he sends them on the mission to kill the evil witch, and then the wizard turns out to be a fraud or phony, and then this ties into sort of this this Gnostic theme, which is this real deeper level of symbolism going on inside the Wizard of Oz, where you have Dorothy, the little girl, basically whisked away in the tornado. This is, she's taken upwards to this magical land to experience gnosis or self-revelation. This would be, for Dorothy, the revelation or the epiphany that there's no place like home, which she has to learn for herself by going on this Gnostic magical, adventure in Oz. You will find this also. You will find this exact same theme in The Lovely Bones and Alice in Wonderland. But you have symbolism going on with this, with the golden path, or the yellow brick road is the golden path of religion. And this comes straight out of Blavatsky's Theosophy movement, where the golden path of religion leads to the false messiah or the demiurge. The demiurge in Gnosticism was the lesser god, and of course this was the idea that organized religion leads to a false messiah, who is of course the wizard, who's a fraud. You have this ties into the ancient mystery schools, where Blavatsky wrote about that in order to navigate the ancient mysteries and receive gnosis, you had to have a brain, fortitude, and courage. And of course, this is why Dorothy is assisted by three travelers who want intelligence, courage, and a heart. This again comes out of Theosophy. And then of course you have the two witches in Oz, the Witches of Oz. The two witches, and they're in the book, and it's only one in the movie. The witch who is the white magician, if you watch the movie, has the pentagram on her wand with the 1 point up and the 2 points down. That symbolizes white magic. When the 2 points are up and the 1 point's down, that's the goat of Mendes, or dark magic. And then in the book you have the witches who assist Dorothy on her travels. The two positive witches, the two witches who use the white magic over the north and south, and this symbolizes ascension, what you would call Jacob's ladder, or the ladder of Minerva, where you go up and down to receive gnosis or enlightenment. And of course they assist her on her travel. The two witches in Oz, and the ones killed right away, who are the black magicians who use the black Kabbalistic magic, are of the east and west. And of course this symbolizes stagnation. You can't achieve Gnostic ascension or enlightenment by moving left to right. You have to move up and down on the ladder of Minerva. This is also the ladder of Mithras in the ancient mystery school of Mithraism. So you have this entire allegory going on with the Wizard of Oz, with this whole Gnostic mystery school initiation theme, where Dorothy has to go through this adventure to receive enlightenment, gnosis, which she does at the very end. Where she realizes that there's no place like home. The phony demiurge, the Wizard of Oz, the lesser god, is revealed to be a fraud. He decides to take her back to Kansas in a hot air balloon, and again, being the false messiah, this symbolizes to Blavatsky, and Baum would have been clearly aware of this. That the religion is nothing but hot air. This is why the demiurge, or the lesser god, rides around in a hot air balloon, because religion's nothing but hot air. And then you'll find this in the movie also, and this is another little Freemasonic mystery school incorporation, where at the very end of the movie, when the wizard reveals himself to be the fraud, but turns out to be kind of a friendly character. Nevertheless, he's trying to be intimidating, but once he's exposed, sort of says, I think he uses the line of, I'm a good man, but I'm a very bad wizard. And he gives Scarecrow wants the brain, and he gives him the diploma. And of course, McKinley, who the Wizard of Oz symbolizes, was a Freemason. And you'll find this in the Wizard of Oz in the movie, that when Scarecrow gets the diploma from the Wizard of Oz or McKinley, Scarecrow actually recites back to the Wizard of Oz or the Freemason what's known as the 47th proposition of Euclid, or the Pythagorean theorem, A squared plus B squared equals C squared, which is the symbol of a Masonic worshipful master. So you'll find that little piece of Masonic symbolism going on at the end of the Wizard of Oz in the movie. And there's other symbolism in it. You have the concept of, and this ties into the political allegory, where Dorothy's in Oz at the very beginning with the Munchkins, and the two little leagues come out dancing in front of her, and the male league, I think, is the Lollipop Guild, and the other one, the female dancers, are the Lullaby League. The Lollipop Guild is the is unionized labor, which was being developed and being cultivated at this time, and then the Lullaby League is the sleeping. This is why the Lullaby League is. It's the sleeping yet awakening Awakening women's suffrage movement, that was coming into effect at this exact same time when Baum was writing The Wizard of Oz. So that's some of the symbolism of The Wizard of Oz. It's a whole chapter in the book, and yeah, you'll have these. These three levels of symbolism. The one of just what you would call the profane explanation. This is probably the one most people are used to. It's just this story of this adventure of this girl going on this magical journey. But you have this dark, deeper political allegory of of late 19th century, early 20th century, American politics, and then of course the Gnostic mystery school, initiation into the mysteries, self-epiphany, self-revelation, theosophy being presented in The Wizard of Oz as well.
Yeah, I think what I found fascinating, and it's a book I've read over and over and over again, not only for myself, but for my children and then my grandchildren. I never caught, and this is one of those things where you just, you see it in the movie and you assume that's how it's written. Originally, the ruby slippers weren't ruby, they were silver.
Well, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That also has symbolic meaning. The slippers in the book are actually silver, and this ties into what was known as the Free Silver movement. It ties into also the gold standard. With the yellow brick road being the gold standard and the Free Silver movement basically treading on the gold standard. It's the same sort of concept of using silver to back paper money. I talk about it more in the book, but yeah, in the book they're silver, and also you have the symbolism going on with the moon, the sacred feminine with Dorothy with the silver slippers. They were changed to red, I believe, in the movie, and it was simply done for aesthetics. I believe I read somewhere that the silver slippers didn't show up well on film on the yellow brick road. It looked like she was barefoot, or you couldn't see her feet. You couldn't see Dorothy's feet, so they just changed them to red. But yeah, in the book, it's silver slippers, and that has two meanings as well. It's politically, it's the Free Silver movement, and then also silver ties into the moon. And there's a biblical passage about this. There's a passage within Theosophy about the silver, about the great chain of being with a silver cord departing the material world. I talk about it more in the book, but yeah, it also has Gnostic tie-ins as well.
Yeah, no, it's and what I found fascinating was that you don't just take it on one level. You go into the tarot and the symbolism there, and you go into the astrology, and you go into that aspect of it. And in many of the movies that you looked into, there were symbols for the Piscean age giving way to the Aquarian age, which I found fascinating.
Oh yeah, the concepts of of ages, of age changeovers, of reawakening. Yeah, absolutely. You will find astrological themes, astrological archetypes. You'll find this in the Matrix. With Neo being the dead and resurrected Sun Man, who's going to herald in a new age for mankind, and of course this is the Christ archetype. With Neo, who's going to end the one age and usher in this new solar age, and you'll actually find that at the end of the very last Matrix movie, when the sun's rising and the little girl says, "Oh, look, Neo, the sun." It's basically it's a dawning of a new day, new solar age. That's another prevalent theme in cinema, hidden cinema, I should say.
Well, yeah, and I kept sitting back thinking, if they were thinking about all they were putting in, they could have lost a storyline. So how does this flow? Is this so subliminally integrated into us genetically on a higher consciousness level that we really aren't aware that that's what we're doing? I mean, how does this happen like this?
Well, it depends. To answer the question, really, it depends on the filmmaker a lot of times and how familiar they are with this material. And I should point out also, I've watched movies before where not every movie incorporates this material. Some do, some don't. I can't answer why some movie makers seem to include it more than others. I can't answer that. The best way for me to describe this is if a filmmaker is doing it intentionally, and like I said, they are, because you're beyond the coincidence level here. To me, incorporating this material, it's like the best way I can describe it is it's like an architect incorporating sacred geometry into a building. The astral alignments, the alignments to the equinoxes, the solstices, potentially an astrological alignment. And it's the same sort of thing with the movies. By incorporating these themes, these symbols, this mythology. What they are doing is they are taking a piece of celluloid and a movie and turning it into this sublime masterpiece. They're turning a movie into mythology. It's really the best way I can describe it. Like I said, I believe it's being intentionally done. You will not find it in every movie. I live by the creed of when in doubt, throw it out. I've watched many movies over and over again where I didn't see enough to worthy of discussion, but and the book really, the Cinema Symbolism book is really the movies that I really could pin this down with, where I could see that this was obviously going on. And believe me, Barbara, it takes more than one viewing a lot of times to pick up on this stuff. I've even watched a movie numerous times, and even have been done with it, been done with the analysis, and I'll go back and watch it again and have missed something and think, oh gee whiz, how did that one get by me? So that's happened. But you could say that the reason they're incorporating it is because you have to really ask them, but my take on it is it's really turning the movie, the piece of cinema, the piece of celluloid into the sublime piece of mythology. And like I said, not all movies do it, but the ones that do it really are the ones we seem to remember.
Well, the ones that you kind of went through in your book, most of them were movies that have stood this test of time. And I'm wondering, is it that they had that pattern that we are unconsciously familiar with, and so we resonate to it, or was it done? I'm trying to figure out if this is just something that has been embedded in us since the beginning of time, or if it's something through evolution and everything, that this is the pattern that works for us, that we live our lives by. I mean, most of us would like to think that we go through, that our lives are, we're young, we grow, we get disappointed, we overcome our growth, we meet Prince Charming, and we live happily ever after.
Right. Well, I think, when it comes to things like the collective unconscious of Jung, of Carl Gustav Jung, what he basically said is that these are themes, things like religion, magic, astrology, sorcery, that are just so embedded in our collective unconscious we can't help ourselves. But I believe a lot of movie makers are aware of this, are very familiar with the occult, are very familiar with this material, so they're incorporating it because they know subconsciously we're hooked on it. I have documented in the book as well where a filmmaker has incorporated this material, and it was obvious the filmmaker had no knowledge of the material, so you could even craft the argument that the filmmaker was influenced by it. So on one level you can say, you can go both ways with it. You could say, well, maybe the filmmakers are just not aware of what they're putting in, but I don't believe that. I think they're aware of what they're doing, and like I said, I think they're using this arcana, this ancient themes, this esoterica, just to really create a sublime masterpiece, and kind of reveal to the subconscious mind, perhaps what the true mythology is going on. I mean, when you become aware, in Cinema Symbolism II, which is what I'm writing right now, some of the movies I'm talking about, I'm going into more of an alchemical theme. I mean, once you become aware of the symbolism and what to look for, it becomes very obvious on screen. I mean, you could just see that this is completely intentionally done. The filmmaker knew exactly what he was talking about, knew this material, incorporated it correctly. But if you had no knowledge of what to look for, it would go right by you. So, to me, the filmmakers are definitely incorporating it to basically create a masterpiece, the same way Da Vinci would incorporate sacred geometry and ratio into his paintings, things like that. It's really the best way I can describe it.
Well, one of the series of movies that that I saw the Masonic influence in were the National Treasure films.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh my goodness, yes. The National Treasure films, the National Treasure 1 and National Treasure 2, these were movies that I analyzed in the Royal Arch of Enoch book. This is the first book I wrote. And I know you wanted to really more talk about the movies, but I'll just briefly go into this quickly. Yeah, it was. This is my first book that I wrote. It's called The Royal Arch of Enoch, and the thrust of the book is I presented this historical anomaly that a high degree of Freemasonry, known as the Royal Arch of Enoch, was incorporating elements and components of the lost Book of Enoch when it shouldn't have been. When the Book of Enoch, the Ethiopian text, was lost to Western civilization, yet Masonic ritualists were incorporating components of the Book of Enoch into this particular higher degree. And I wrote that book, and what I really wanted to do was I sort of traced the history of Masonry. I got into the rituals. I traced the history of Masonry, brought it up to modern day, brought it up to the United States, got into the Masonic architecture of Washington, D.C., things like that. And I wanted to end the book and kind of bring the Royal Arch of Enoch up to modern day. So I did. The final chapter is sort of what I would best describe as Masonic Enochian solar symbolism in movies. And the two movies, some of the movies, I think there's about 5 or 6 movies in the final chapter, but 2 of them that I took on in Royal Arch of Enoch was National Treasure 1 and National Treasure 2. Oh, and yeah, this is these movies are very Freemasonic in nature. A lot of Masonic symbolism, not what you think is going on. The Royal Arch, you have to be a little bit familiar with Royal Arch ritual symbolism. I'll just go into this very quickly. The Royal Arch ceremonial, it's part of the high degree system, and what it documents is, to make a long story incredibly short, it documents the recovery of the treasure of Freemasonry beneath on the Temple Mount, beneath the Holy Ground in Jerusalem, where the subterranean vault is discovered. And make a long story short, treasure is discovered, the treasure of Freemasonry. If you wish to see this ritual on the big screen, it's the first National Treasure movie, where the treasure of Freemasonry is discovered beneath the Holy Ground in New York, in the subterranean vault. It's literally the entire Masonic ritual on screen. So if you ever want to see a Masonic ritual presented from start to finish on screen, it's the first National Treasure movie. It's the Royal Arch ceremonial. The Royal Arch ritual is the 13th degree in the Scottish Rite system. It's the 7th in the York Rite system. And if you're a Freemason or you're familiar with this degree or you're not, and you want to just see it on the big screen, just check out the first National Treasure movie. National Treasure 2 also has a lot of veiled esoterica that's very Masonic. Again, it ties into Royal Arch mythology and philosophy, but the 13th degree has to do with the restoration of wisdom. And I'm just plowing through this material very quickly. And in National Treasure 2, when they need the wisdom, they go to Chapter 13 of Riley's book. That's a clear reference to the Royal Arch ceremonial. At the end, the president tells them to take a look at page 47. Again, this is a reference to the 47th proposition of Euclid, which is the emblem of a Masonic worshipful master. So, exoterically, people will see, the little Masonic adventure going on and using the founding fathers and all that. Believe me, there's a lot more deeper Masonic ritual and symbolism going on in those 2 movies. You will see this completely paralleled in the first Da Vinci Code movie, or the only Da Vinci Code movie. And this is, again, another film that I took on in Royal Arch of Enoch, It's the final chapter. And it's the same theme. Every time they need wisdom or a clue or knowledge, the number 13 pops up on screen. And again, this is a reference to this 13th degree of the Scottish Rite, known as the Royal Arch ceremonial. I'm not going to belabor this with a lot of time, just suffice to say that if you understand the ritual and its symbolic meaning and its underlying philosophy, it's the restoration of all wisdom. So a lot of times these movies, when if they're Freemasonic in nature or esoteric, if wisdom is needed or required, the number 13 will always pop up. And believe you me, the first Da Vinci Code movie is literally a shrine to the number 13. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. The Mona Lisa is kept in Hall 13, which has the clue on it. The guy's Rolex, when the keystone is in the back of the van, and that's another Royal Arch emblem, the keystone. It's 1:12 a.m., add 1 plus 12 to get 13. And there are numerous other number 13 references throughout the Da Vinci Code movie. But yeah, National Treasure 1 and 2, very Freemasonic, and a lot of veiled Freemasonic symbolism in those movies.
Yeah, no, it was, I'm fascinated with Freemasonry. I had no idea as to the different degrees and the different arches and all of that. And, of course, Enoch got me because I have studied Enoch and Ezekiel and stuff like that, so that
sure.
It became very fascinating. But, when I started to get into your book, I realized that my background was just not strong enough to really be able to interpret everything that you were throwing at me. So I went to the easy one, which was the movie book.
Yeah, well, I've had a couple complaints on the Royal Arch that it may have been a little too intense. I tried to, in the first 3 chapters, kind of give, in Royal Arch, sort of like a background on Freemasonry. I have a chapter, where I just tried to give a little of the back history of Freemasonry to make it so that a person who had no knowledge of this material could come to it. But yeah, there's a lot going on with it, with the differences in the degree systems, the differences between the high degrees and the Blue Lodge, where people wonder where these degrees come from. They completely contrast one another philosophically, the high degrees and the Blue Lodge. It's a lot going on. The Royal Arch of Enoch, it's a 700-page book. It's the first book I wrote, and the final chapter of Royal Arch of Enoch it deals with Masonic symbolism in film, and cinema symbolism was literally born out of that chapter. I talked about in Royal Arch of Enoch movies like what we were just talking about, the National Treasure, Da Vinci Code, being there with Peter Sellers, which is the Solar Journey, Excalibur, the King Arthur movie. That the King Arthur legend is another solar allegory. I do the Monty Python movie in Cinema Symbolism.
No.
Yeah. No, and then I wanted to. When I got done Royal Arch of Enoch, there were these other movies that I wanted to talk about that not necessarily were Masonic, but were still very overloaded with these esoteric themes. So I literally started writing Cinema Symbolism right off the bat, and as it would turn out, Barbara, when I was writing Cinema Symbolism, I wanted to talk about more movies, but I thought, good God, this book will just go on forever and ever. I remember when I got done writing the Star Wars chapter, the Lord of the Rings chapter, and the Matrix chapter, I was originally going to do the Harry Potter material, and I thought, there's just no way. I just thought, this book will never end. So I excised out the Harry Potter material. I excised out the C.S. Lewis material. And as I speak to you right now, I'm actually writing 3 books at once. The Cinema Symbolism II, which you mentioned at the top of the show, my first work of fiction, the Burnblack novel. I'm writing that as well, and I'm also I just started writing a new book on Freemasonry, where I'm going to fill in some of the backstory behind the Royal Arch of Enoch, some more of the Masonic history. So I'm actually writing 3 books right now. But yeah, Cinema Symbolism is brand new. It's been out for about 2 months, and I'm real proud of it. And I know we were talking on the phone the other day,
yes.
And I'm glad you liked it so much.
Oh, I loved it, and it made me look with different eyes. Somebody in the chat room has a question. They said they were thinking that the Masonic went back to the Knights Templar. You want to fill them in on if there is a connection and what it is?
Yeah, sure. If you don't mind me talking about it, I know you wanted to do a little of the movies, but I don't mind answering the question. If you would like me to, it's going to take me. I'll try to do it as fast as possible. Make a long story short. What you have going on, and I'm just going to try to do this as fast as possible, but I want your listeners to understand that I'm really plowing through tons of material here. Like I said, if you want to really get into this, check out the Royal Arch of Enoch book. Freemasonry modern-day Freemasonry, as it comes to exist today, was born in 1717 in England. This is degrees 1, 2, and 3. This is what is known as the Entered Apprentice degree, the Fellowcraft degree, and the Master Mason degree. After you complete the Master Mason degree, and in some lodges you have to take a catechism on it, my lodge you did, then you're a Freemason. Then you can hold yourself out as a Freemason. And this is 1717 England. What you have right after this, a Presbyterian minister, a Calvinist named James Anderson, writes what's called the Constitutions of the Freemasons. And he traces, and it's legendary, I have to stress this, he writes this legendary history of Freemasonry, and he traces it back to the biblical stoneworkers who put things together like the Tower of Babel, traces it to the Egyptians, to the Gothic cathedral builders, et cetera, et cetera. Years later, in France, a man named Andrew Michael the Chevalier Ramsay writes his Oration of 1737. This is key because it's out of this oration that the high degree system is born. And Ramsay's a very interesting character. He associates with Jesuits. He associates with the Stuart House, especially the Catholic side. He's a founder of the Royal Society. He's a Universalist. He writes this oration on Freemasonry in 1737, and he says, Anderson, I don't really disagree with you about the stone building part. He said, I don't really disagree with you about Masonic secrets and Masonic construction and the architecture. He said I'll go that far. I'll give you that. He says, but Freemasonry, its origins lay with this group of warrior monks who are Roman Catholic, known as the Knights Templar. He said that those are the real founders of Freemasonry. And what he says is, he said when the Templars were over in the Holy Land, they came into contact with holdovers from the ancient mystery schools of Eleusis, Mithras, Pythagoras, Zoroastrianism, Sufism. And he says when the Templars, they encountered these mystery schools, or at least these remnants of them, and brought it back to Europe. And the Knights Templar are really the founders of Freemasonry. And he basically says Freemasonry is the real Roman Catholic religion, and it's popish. And Freemasonry is Roman Catholic. That's basically, he injects this whole Knights Templar Roman Catholic element into Freemasonry. And it's from his oration in 1737 that the higher degree system is born. And this comes in the 1740s. And the high degree system, it's originally known as the Rite of Perfection. And this deals with a lot of things that completely go against the philosophies of the Blue Lodge, where you had equality, egalitarianism in the Blue Lodge. In the higher degrees, you have things of papal monarchy, Jesuitism, Templarism, royalty, monarchy. The higher degree system is cultivated by the Society of Jesus as part of the Counter-Reformation. I'm just plowing through a ton of material here, but in a nutshell, you have this entire Roman Catholic Jesuit high degree system that is born out of Ramsay's oration. The 25 degrees are eventually midwifed into the United States, and these 25 degrees are basically the backbone of what becomes the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. And there is this, I talk about it much more in the book, between the difference between the two high degree systems, with concepts of papal monarchy, Kabbalistic apotheosis, Gnostic essentio, royalty that you will find in the higher degree system that is sort of out of the Blue Lodge system. They are very much different philosophically. So Ramsay is the guy who really interjects this Knights Templar Roman Catholic element that you'll really find more in the high degree system than you will in the Blue Lodge. Okay.
Well, most of us, have a very basic background, I have to say, in Freemasonry, and it was my understanding that the Knights Templar, they were the foundation for the Freemasons, and you went from there. But in essence, you're kind of saying that.
Well, it depends on who you want to talk to. When the Blue Lodge is set up in England in 1717, you really won't find too much of a Knights Templar theme going on in Blue Lodge Freemasonry in England. You have to remember, in England in 1717, Roman Catholicism, the Knights Templar were hated. Anything Roman Catholic was expunged from the country. The Henrican settlement had basically thrown the Roman Catholics out of the country. In 1701, you have the Act of Settlement forbidding Roman Catholic from sitting on the English throne. In 1605, you had the Jesuits plotting to blow up James I. The Jesuits plotted to overthrow the country in 1588 with the Spanish Armada. So anything Templar Catholic was hated in London. It was very much on the down low. It was frowned upon. The Jesuits come along years later, and again, these are the guys who are charged with the Counter-Reformation, which is the polar opposite, which is the destruction of the Western civilization, destruction of the Protestant Church, destruction of England by any means necessary. So in 1717, you have Freemasonry becoming very prolific, very English, very popular, very non-denominational. So the Jesuits seek to destroy this, but of course they do it through their whole tactic of subterfuge by creating this sort of Jesuit-themed high-degree Freemasonry that becomes very popular on the continent of Europe. What they are essentially doing, to make a long story real short, is the entire purpose of the high-degree system and Templarism within the higher degrees was to restore the Catholic side of the Stuart monarchy back to the throne of England. That's really what their political motivations were behind the higher degree system of Freemasonry. You will find this political allegory going on in the higher degree system. It's a very long story. It ties into the works of a man named Elias Ashmole, who was an English Freemason who saw a lot of political allegory going on in the Blue Lodge symbolism as well, with the death and resurrection of Hiram Abiff. To him, that was the death and resurrection of the Stuart monarchy with Charles I. So you have this whole thing with the Blue Lodge being very non-denominational Christian, or really not even Christian. It's really deism. It's what it's set out to be, based on these sort of Judeo-Christian stories from the Bible. That's better what I'm trying to say. But it's deism. It's English. It's very popular. Anyone could join it. And basically, years later, the higher degree system was a way to Roman Catholic size, I guess is the best way for me to say it, Jesuitize Freemasonry and give it this heavy Templar. Because people forget, remember, the Templars are all Roman Catholic. These guys are the Pope in white robes, basically. So anytime you hear, Knight Templarism and Templars, that's just another name for the Vatican. So it was just, this way for the Jesuits to sort of cultivate basically what you could best describe as Roman Catholic Freemasonry.
Okay, gotcha. That was one hell of a history.
Well, that was me going as fast as possible.
Well, you took us through several centuries, but I actually think I followed most of it. So,
well, there's a lot more to it. I could get into it, but you ask me anything you want to. Like I said, I wrote a 700-page book about it. I get into much more detail in the book, but you're going to find when you delve into these Masonic rituals, there's a lot of allegory going on. Both astrologically, solar symbolism, astrological symbolism, political symbolism. It's a very intense subject, and like I said, the Royal Arch was 20 years of research, and I'm writing more on it. I'm doing another book right now on Freemasonry called Freemasonry and the Path to Babylon, where we're going to get into more of this, Jacobite, Jesuit themes in the higher degrees, things like that. But you ask me anything you want to. If you want to go back to the movie book, we can do that too.
Yeah, I do think I would like to do that, but I think that it's time for a break. So if you're okay with that, we'll take a short break and then we'll get back to it, okay?
Yeah, I'm not gonna hang up the phone. I'm just gonna hold the line and just take a quick break, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Okay, I'll see you in about 5.
You got it.
In a lot of the books and in a lot of the places, you take symbolism back to ancient Egypt, which I found fascinating.
Sure. Let me. I'm going to answer your question. Let me just point out also, because I know we were just talking about Freemasonry. I don't know if you or me mentioned this during the show. I'd just like to point out that I am actually a Freemason. That's important for people to know, that I'm not just some guy who's talking or anything. I am a Freemason. I've been involved with it almost 20 years now. So I just want people to be aware of that. I am a Blue Lodge Mason. I am also in the Scottish Rite as well. But yes, going to Egypt, you will find Egyptian themes, concepts of death and resurrection, Osiris, the Osirian cycle. You'll find this in cinema. You'll find it in Freemasonry. I'm going to get off the Masonic tip in a minute. The Blue Lodge ritual, the death and resurrection of Hiram Abiff in the Third Degree Blue Lodge is a duplication of the myth of Osiris being killed and resurrected. And of course, this is also the Christ Savior archetype, the death and resurrected Sun Man. You will find very Egyptian themes going into Egypt in the Back to the Future trilogy, which is very Egyptian. The Sun family of the McFlys against Biff Tannen, who is Typhon, who is the enemy of the Sun. I get into you have to understand a lot of background on Egyptian mythology, which I do present in the book. But a lot of symbolism going on in the Back to the Future trilogy, which is decidedly Egyptian. What's the other one? My mind's drawing a blank on that's very Egyptian also.
The Omen trilogy, or the
yes, oh my goodness, yes, the Omen films.
Okay.
The Omen films deal with a lot of astrology, astrotheology. There are some very heavy Egyptian themes in this. Thank you, Barbara, for bringing that up. The Egyptian, the entire concept of the Christ story being Egyptian in nature is presented in the Omen films. You'll see this, I'm just trying to think of. There's so many of them. In the second movie. Well, for starters, let me just say this: when the Omen films are just over the top with astrology, astronomy, astrotheology. The filmmakers really play on the weather in that movie, and especially the second one, when the Antichrist, the young Antichrist is coming to power. It's perpetually winter or fall outside, which is the death of the sun in autumn and winter, when in the northern hemisphere the sun or Christ is in death. So the Antichrist is, of course, or darkness is coming to power when it's perpetually autumn and winter outside. In part two, believe it or not, and I was floored to see this. That the one guy who becomes convinced, it's the curator of the museum. The name of the character I can't recall right now. I think Charles Warren may be. He becomes convinced that Damien Thorne is the Antichrist, and to safeguard himself against the Antichrist, he actually runs around with the Crux Ansata, the Egyptian Ankh, basically, to protect himself. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. He as a protective device against the Antichrist, against the Christian devil, which is basically Typhon. He's actually running around with an Egyptian Ankh in his hand. I couldn't believe it. Then in part three, you will have the studio where Damien Thorne is being interviewed, has all the Egyptian imagery in it of Osiris and Isis and Horus. And my goodness gracious, that one, the Antichrist or darkness is actually defeated at the vernal equinox, when the sun is resurrected from the tomb of winter, when the sun or Jesus is born again. And believe it or not, the third Omen movie was actually released, and this is the movie where the Antichrist Damien Thorne is extinguished, was actually released on the vernal equinox of 1981. Of all things, the resurrected sun, the sun coming back to life, and the defeat of darkness. So that's another study of in itself. The release date of movies can be very occult in nature. We talk about like The Wizard of Oz. and esoteric themes and things like that. You'll know what I'm talking about because you've read the book. But there are, the casting of an actor or an actress can be occult and have an occult meaning. In Cinema Symbolism II, I'm getting into some of the artwork of movies, the posters. The artwork of posters can be very occult in nature as well, and can convey a hidden meaning or a dualistic meaning. That's another study is movie posters. Release dates of movies. I documented the one that was really the only one I could find where that movie was clearly being symbolizing the vernal equinox, astrology. I mean, my goodness, the third Omen movie where the sun is being born again, the vernal equinox. You have the astrological alignments. You have the sun, the stars coming together in Cassiopeia, which is the female constellation. This is, of course, paralleling the constellation Virgo with Pisces in the Piscean age. A lot of astrological, astrotheological, and Egyptian, solar, death, solar, enemy of the sun, Typhon, with the Egyptian Ankh thing going on in the Omen. Yeah, very Egyptian in nature. You'll find it, believe it or not, also in the Back to the Future movies as well, on a sort of different level. Those movies are also overloaded with the same sort of theme, where George McFly is the, father of the younger McFly, who is the sun child, Horus, the solar hero. George McFly is killed and resurrected in part 2. Biff Tannen is Typhon, the enemy of the sun. The solar family lives in Lion Estate, which is the, Leo the lion, the reference to the sun. The DeLorean is the solar Kabbalistic chariot of the Jewish Merkherber. A lot of very mystical themes going on in the Back to the Future trilogy.
Yeah, it boggles your mind to think that it was all done on purpose. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
It can't possibly be, because everyone has to have the same. Everybody taps into the same collective unconscious, so the pattern is there. And for those that have insight enough to know that there is a pattern, they can take advantage of that pattern. And it seems to me that almost all of the movies that you did review did very, very well at the box office.
No. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt.
Yeah, I can't remember one of them that did not do well. And it seems to me that there really is a pattern. And whether you're doing it with Alice in Wonderland or The Wizard of Oz or The Matrix or the Star Wars trilogy or even, the place where I saw the most of it, I have to tell you that Wizard of Oz blew me away. But when you got into the trilogy of the Rings, that's where oh my God, it was so, it was thick with it there. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, and again, this is, coming out of the world of J.R. Tolkien. And again, people, they wonder where is this material coming from? It's a couple things. For starters, let me just answer your question this way. Also, is these movie makers are very familiar with this material. I told this story before, and I'll tell it briefly on your show. There was one of the characters from the X-Files in the 1990s. It was one of the lone gunmen who was one of the conspiracy guys who hung around with Mulder. And I'm just going to tell the story real quick. He had to go in and meet with the screenwriter or the producer. He had a question about the show or something. It was no big deal. He said he went into this person's office, and he was just sitting there talking to him, and the guy had to answer a phone. He said his eyes were drawn to this guy's bookshelf, this producer's bookshelf. And he said, I was expecting to see books on like how to write screenplays, how to write, books on film production. He said the entire library shelf was nothing but books by Aleister Crowley, Black Magic, the Occult, Madame Blavatsky, Manly P. Hall. He said, so, this is all second nature to these guys. And also, I need to point out, and I talk about this in the book, at least we forget that Manly Palmer Hall, if your listeners are not familiar with who that is, he was probably the greatest mystic of the 20th century. He was a Freemason, and he wrote numerous these massive compendiums on mysticism and the occult and symbolism. In fact, the Royal Arch of Enoch, I based that book, or I modeled that book. I shouldn't say I based it. I modeled that book after The Secret Teachings of All Ages, which is Hall's magnum opus. But Manly Palmer Hall's, yeah, his Philosophical Research Society is literally a stone's throw from the movie-making industry. So, yeah, I mean, these guys are familiar with it in Hollywood. But when you get into people like Tolkien, who wrote The Lord of the Rings, I mean, Tolkien was an Oxford University professor. He hung around with C.S. Lewis, who was the guy who wrote the Narnia tales, and they hung out in this pub in Oxford. I've been there. It's called the Eagle and Child, and they had this little group that would get together and talk about mysticism, and you know the occult and mythology. And they called themselves the Inklings. And one of the guys who was in the Inklings was a man named Charles Williams. And if you're not familiar who this name is, this is something I'm talking about more in Cinema Symbolism II. Williams was a member of a secret society known as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and this was really a Victorian quasi-Masonic secret society. Aleister Crowley was in this. Bram Stoker, the guy who wrote Dracula, was in this, and Williams had an influence on Tolkien and Lewis, probably more Lewis than Tolkien. But again, you know, these guys were very familiar with this lore, and they incorporated it into their novel, and then you'll see it on the screen. Ian Fleming did the exact same thing with the James Bond movies. You'll find a lot of hermetic, esoteric themes coming into the world of James Bond, coming out of the world of Aleister Crowley and Dennis Wheatley and people like that. So I mean, this material is very prevalent amongst these authors and these filmmakers.
Yeah, it just, to me, I notice the archetypes, and you've got your sun god, and you've got your hero, and you've got your mother figure, and you've got the wise old sage, of course, is the one that I always am drawn to, whether it's Gandalf or Dumbledore,
right,
or Yoda. It kind of you kind of look at everything you're seeing in a different way, in a different light, and not every movie follows the same patterns, and yet usually the blockbusters have these patterns in them, have these archetypes in them that you have to. The more that our subconscious is able to go, oh, I know that, I can relate to that, I like that person because they are, and sometimes you don't even realize what you're doing is finding the archetypes and then putting the story together in your head and then flowing with the movie, and that's why you remember the movie, because it follows what the archetypes do.
Yeah, that's right. That's called the monomyth. And basically, this ties into the Harry Potter material, the Lord of the Rings, the C.S. Lewis, Star Wars, Matrix, where you have the hero as the sun god. And it's the monomyth is basically, for lack of a better word, the sun's journey. This is the Christianity, the Christ tale. You'll find this in Judaism. You'll actually find astrological elements in Islam. But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. It's you can call this character, Luke Skywalker, Neo, or Harry Potter, or Frodo Baggins. It's the same. It's the same thing. And you're right. You have the hermit. The living tarot card, the hermit card. This is the Hermes Trismegistus character, the wizard, the sage. And you're absolutely right. This is Albus Dumbledore, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, Morpheus, Gandalf the Grey. This is the character who always has all the answers, but doesn't, only delves them out or only reveals them piecemeal. He'll never give you the full story. He only doles it out piecemeal. He turns up, and he's always the sort of like the enabler or the assistant to the sun god. you will find this archetype reversed. If it's the evil wizard, he's also very fascinating. This is Thulsa Doom in Conan the Barbarian, Willy Wonka the chocolate maker, who has the Kabbalistic occult secrets. But usually when there's a hero figure with this guy, he's usually out, the hero is usually motivated by like revenge or money or something like that, where when it's the positive Hermes or the positive wizard character, they're out to save the world. And again, this is the Christ-like, sun god, the archetype. Jesus was to save the earth, or to save mankind from itself. This is Frodo Baggins, who's going to save Middle Earth. Luke Skywalker, who's going to save the galaxy. Neo, who is going to, save, the world from enslavement. Or Harry Potter, who's going to save the wizarding world from the dark evil lord. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Light versus darkness. Yeah.
So we've literally watched the same movie over and over and over again all of our lives, just about.
Well, I wouldn't say it's the same. Some movies have this. Now if you take a movie like, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't know. Not every movie has the solar savior in it, but clearly the Matrix does. The Matrix trilogy does. The Star Wars movies do. Both of them. 1, 2, 3 does as well, and 4, 5, and 6. The Lord of the Rings does. Those are the Harry Potter material. You'll find these same things of, the hero, having some sort of epiphany, death and resurrection, assisted by the wizard or the hermit character. The sacred feminine character always turns up. And you'll find these also on a lesser extent in the James Bond, where Bond is the sun saving the world, has the alchemical wedding with the lunar goddess or the Bond girl. You have the hermit character in the Bond films and the movies, who is Q, who always provides the wisdom in the form of the miraculous gadget that saves Bond's life. And the Bond villains, are very occult. Auric Goldfinger, the alchemist, Hugo Drax, the dragon, Ernst Stavro Blofeld, the Illuminati character who wants to take over the world. You'll see those same themes there. But then you get into, I'm trying to think, I'm just drawing a blank where movies, you take the some of the comedy movies that I talk about at the end of the book. Clearly, like Ghostbusters, they have archetypes in them, but they're, or 9 to 5, which is basically just Ghostbusters reversed. Obviously not, solar figures, but very astrological in nature. Even still, you have, the hero, the heroine, although, they're not necessarily, or like Conan the Barbarian, he's not really out to save the world or anything. He's just trying to rescue the heroine. But even Conan the Barbarian, even though it's not really a solar figure, or the solar savior, the Luke Skywalker, the Neo character, even Conan the Barbarian is dead and resurrected, of all things. So it's a lot of these same themes going on over and over again, and you'll see. And I agree with you. A lot of the big movies, the blockbusters. You look at the parallels between the Harry Potter, the Star Wars, the Matrix. It's sort of the same story, kind of told over and over again, just in different settings, basically. And I think even Lucas, this is all coming out of the world of Joseph Campbell, the monomyth, the hero with 1,000 faces. It's the same thing. It's the hero with 1,000 faces. It's the sun, the solar journey, and even Lucas said, someone asked Lucas, said, this is just the same story from mythology of the sun god, just you've taken it into the future. And he's actually hasn't. He's taken it into the past. Remember the Star Wars movies say a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So even that's a past story. It's just the same story with different names on it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so this is a template that is in our subconscious.
Well, it's in our subconscious, but it's in your conscious. Once you become aware of it, you'll see it. Then you'll become cognizant of it.
Oh, okay, and so it comes from the collective consciousness. Where did it originally come from?
Oh, we don't know. Who knows? We know that answer. We'll know the mysteries of the universe. Carl Gustav Jung just said it's been with us since time immemorial, and it just dates back to when you get into primitive cultures and things like that. The oldest adoration of them all is the sun, the moon, the stars. And of course, the reasons for this is the sun is the life giver, the savior. Without the sun, there's no life on earth. But you have trouble worshiping the sun, so you worship the moon because you can look at it. You can't look at the sun. And of course, the sun and the moon, with the naked eye on earth, are the exact same size. They're, of course, different sizes because they're different. They're further away from each other. But from Earth, they have the exact same size, just about. And then, of course, the stars. And the idea was the concept behind it, or the motivation, I guess is the better word, as to why they're adored is because they're in the heavens, closer to God or the gods, depending on the culture. So, thus, the stars, the moon, and the heaven, and the planets were worthy of worship and adoration. I mean, this is Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology. I say in the Royal Arch of Enoch book, it's Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, just with new names on it, basically. So how far this dates back. And Jung, if you read Carl Gustav Jung, he just says basically it's been with mankind since day one, and it's just inherited. It's just passed down from one culture, from one generation to the next, and it's so ingrained in our unconscious at this point in time. For basically, he says there's nothing you can do about it other than just be aware of it.
Yeah, and it would seem to me that at some point in time, maybe we'll change it. I mean, if there is a template, then it is within our power to change. Of course, if it wins you Academy Awards, there's no reason to change it. I wanted to get into also The Sixth Element and The Blade Runner. Both of those movies were amazing.
The Fifth Element in Blade Runner, yeah, sure. You have in the Fifth Element, you have the concept of the sacred feminine, Sophia, known to the Gnostics, and of course she is the fifth element. Elements being 1, 2, 3, and 4 would be earth, wind, fire, air. I guess water.
Water.
Yeah, that's
Earth,
one
wind,
of the things.
fire, water.
Right, and of course this deals with the concept of the fifth element ties into the Pythagorean mysteries with the pentagram, with the fifth element being the mastery, the ether, the mastery of the other four, and of course she comes to save mankind from the darkness. She's she's sort of the female Christ Savior, which is an interesting character. But yeah, you'll find this. You'll find concepts of in the fifth element of the secret societies, of wisdom being passed down through secret societies. At the beginning, he says, pass this down to your order, but keep it within the order. Don't let it out into the public. So you'll have the secret society influence being passed down through all the generations with what the fifth element really is. And of course you have, again, the concept of light. She releases the light to stop the darkness. This is Manichaean Gnosticism, light versus darkness, cosmology, Manichaean cosmology. And then you have some real subtle things going on in that movie, which are really great, with the whole character of Dallas Corbin, who is sort of the enabler of the fifth element. And of course he meets the guy who's Pan, the god Pan, who is Ruby Rod, who has the single horn on his head and is only out to seduce the nymphs or the stewardesses. And of course he plays the Pan pipes or the radio device. So you have the god Pan turning up in the fifth element, and then he constantly calls. What's really interesting is he constantly calls Dallas Corbin demon. He's shorting Dallas down to the letter D and then calling him D-man, but it sounds like demon. And again, this ties into Gnosticism, the concept of the daemon, or the demon, your Christian demon, which comes from this idea of a daemon, who is this sort of hierarchy, angelic, being, enlightened creature, who of course helps the sacred feminine, or is sort of an intermediary between humankind and the gods. And of course, Demon or Damon, Dallas Corbin, assists the godlike fifth element to save mankind. So I mean, that's a real great play on words that they have going on in the fifth element. And then the other one that's just fantastic, and this ties into the Matrix, and this comes out of a movie called Saturn III, where when they're going to, and this is really great symbolism, because it turns up in Saturn III, then it turns up in the fifth element, and then it turns up 2 years later in the Matrix movie, where in Saturn III, which was a movie that came out in the early 1980s, when they're out in space and they want to become unconscious, they take a pill called a blue dreamer, and it's the blue pill that puts you to sleep. You'll find this in the fifth element, where the stewardesses, when the people are traveling into outer space, the stewardesses wear the blue costume, and their sole purpose is to put the people to sleep. And then, of course, this is obviously carried over into the Matrix movie, where when you want to go back to sleep, you want to go back into the Matrix, you take the blue pill that puts you back to sleep. Of course, the red pill will show you the reality, the true reality. But if you want to go back to sleep, you take the blue pill. That comes from the stewardesses of the fifth element, which in turn comes from the movie Saturn III, which came out in the early 1980s. So, yeah, I mean, I get into more in the fifth element. I believe there's some other symbolism going on in that. It's escaping me right now, but it's a great film and has a lot of symbology in it. Blade Runner is great. I just had just briefly the pleasure of meeting William Sanderson the other day, who was Rutger Hauer's sidekick in Blade Runner. Super nice guy. Your listeners may know him better. He was the police chief or sheriff on True Blood on HBO, and was E.B. Farnham, of course, on Deadwood. I had the pleasure of meeting him the other day. But Blade Runner is decidedly loads going on in that thing. Decidedly Gnostic in nature. Rick Deckard, Harrison Ford. The whole idea is he really a replicant? You never know if he passes the test. All his apartment is nothing but the old black and white photos. Rick Deckard, Harrison Ford is, of course, René Descartes. It's the same name almost, who is the French philosopher who talked about emotions and, human beings having souls. And, of course, the nature of emotions. Of course, Descartes has, epiphany through Roy Batty, who is the Jesus Christ figure. When Batty's dying, gives that real famous soliloquy at the end. And, of course, Batty dies with the stigmata through his palm, with the nail through his palm, and releases the dove at the end. This comes straight out of the gospel tale, where when Jesus was baptized, the dove descended, and Batty, as he dies, the dove's released, symbolizing that his Holy Spirit, that the replicants actually have souls, and the soul ascends into heaven, and of course this is the revelation, the Gnostic epiphany that Descartes has. It's a fantastic movie, lots of, and then of course you have the Terrell industry, Joe Turkel, who is the head of, Terrell. He is, of course, the sort of Luciferian, enabler of the Enochian angels, the Nexus Sixes, and of course Joe Turkel was the devil in The Shining. So it's an interesting piece of, Lloyd the bartender in The Shining. It's the same actor. So a great piece of occult casting there. And of course, not only is Terrell the creator of the replicants, the Nexus Sixes, and this is in the director's cut, but Terrell is also the investors of wisdom. They're the progenitors of wisdom. You'll find that in the director's cut, where the owl, the symbol of wisdom, flashes the eyes red, that it's a replicant. That not only is Terrell capable of creating human life, the godlike creators of biomechanics, but they're also the creators of wisdom as well. They can imbue their creation not only like people like Roy Batty with life, but with wisdom. And of course, this contradicts, it's a Kabbalistic golem is what he's created, but he actually can invest it with the human soul, with the intelligence, where you look at like Frankenstein's monster, Edward Scissorhands, things like that, which are also golems. They don't have the intelligence of the soul, really. They're just, animated human-like creatures, but lack the soul. But Terrell actually can manufacture the soul as well. Fascinating movie, lots of Gnostic themes, lots of occult themes. I talk about it. It's one of the movies I get into in great detail in Cinema Symbolism.
Yeah, no, I never picked up on the fact that Harrison Ford was a replica.
Yeah, that's really the big debate. If you watch the director's cut, it's more well known. It's presented more that Harrison Ford is actually a Nexus 6. There are several tip-offs to this in the movie. The one is that he takes the test. I think it's called the Voight Kampf test. I have to look that up. I may be pronouncing that wrong. It's something like that, though. He takes it, but you never find out if he passes it or not. Then Harrison Ford, Rick Deckard's apartment is nothing but the old black and white photographs, and of course this is what the replicants latch onto, is the old photographs, because it's evidence of a past that doesn't exist. And then you have the unicorn origami, symbolizing that this is what he dreams about, but the one police chief knew. I forget the name of him, but it's symbolizing that he knows what he's up to, basically, and that Harrison Ford was a replicant all along. It's debated. Ridley Scott won't tell you, and Ridley Scott's been asked this before, and he won't answer it. He won't tell you whether the Harrison Ford, Rick Deckard is actually a replicant or not. And again, this comes straight out of the world, of Gnosticism. The Blade Runner is based on a novel by a esoteric novelist who was very much into Gnosticism and conspiracies, by the name of Philip K. Dick, and he wrote a novel called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" And that's the template. That's the template of Blade Runner, is Philip K. Dick's novel there.
Oh, I'll be darned. We have a question from the chat room. Somebody has asked, and I don't recall you doing these movies, but they have asked you about two other movies by Keanu Reeves, Constantine and the Devil's Advocate, and if there was any symbolism of either of those, if you've looked into them.
Well, I'll tell you, the Devil's Advocate I've seen. I'd have to go back and watch it. It's not something I talk about in Cinema Symbolism. I've seen it, but it's been years ago, so I'm going to pass on commenting on that. John Constantine Hellblazer, or Constantine, is a movie based on the works of a man named Alan Moore, who is an occultist, ceremonial magician, and comic book author. I am actually tackling 3 of his movies in Cinema Symbolism II, or 3 of the movies based on his comic books is what I should say. John Constantine Hellblazer is not one of them. I am actually taking on, although I probably could. I'd have to go back and watch it. It's been a while since I've seen it. But again, 3 of his works that have been turned into major movies, and which are just overloaded with occult symbolism, is From Hell, starring Johnny Depp and Heather Graham. That's alchemical. Watchmen is a smorgasbord of conspiracy and Gnosticism, and V for Vendetta also has a lot of conspiracy and Gnostic themes of revelation, epiphany, very occult in nature. Those are 3 movies that I'm very familiar with, and I will be talking about in Cinema Symbolism II, Cinema Symbolism sequel, which I'm actually writing right now.
Wow. Okay, well, the other thing that we haven't hit upon is, we've hit upon the men in the movies, but we haven't hit upon the female archetype much at all. It feels like it's mostly just men that get to fill these patterns, and yet, I mean, if you go into Alien, I mean, your hero was a woman.
Yeah, you have. I've been asked, before. You have some people. The role of the mother and the female being portrayed negatively. It can be, but you can have male villains as well. But you have had the woman portrayed very positively as well. Ellen Ripley on the Nostromo. The name of the ship has occult meaning. Look that up. That's in the book. Who is the savior of the crew. Well, she's not the savior. She saves herself. The crew gets eliminated by the xenomorph. But she is basically the heroine of the Alien movies. She is the hero archetype who, again, is dead and resurrected in part 3. Well, she dies at the end of part 3 and resurrected in part 4. The ship she's on in Alien 1, the Nostromo, is a occult reference to her and her personality. Look that up in Cinema Symbolism. I talk about that. You have and then of course you have the whole Hitchcockian thing going on with Ash and Mother, where the robot is just doing everything that the robot, the mother tells him to do. This is the very Hitchcockian Norman Bates Mother syndrome going on in Alien 1. But yeah, you have the female heroine, the female savior in Alien. Of course, you have Princess Leia in Star Wars, who is the moon. If Luke Skywalker is the sun god, the name Luke. The name Luke comes from lux, Latin, meaning light. And then, of course, what light skywalks the sun. So you have Luke, who is the solar, hero. In mythology, the sun god is Apollo or Helios, who has the lunar sister Diana, or Artemis, and of course, Princess Leia is the lunar sister who only wears the white robes. You have her as the female heroine in the Star Wars movies, and then again in the Matrix, you have Trinity. I mean, my God. I mean, if that isn't a giveaway, just her name, as to what she represents, the Holy Trinity. This is again Gnosticism coming. If you're familiar with Gnosticism and the Trinity coming out of the Nag Hammadi library, Sophia, divine feminine, was one of the elements of the Holy Trinity, hence her name Trinity. You have the sacred feminine there. She's kind of the the counterbalance to Neo's son savior figure. Catherine Raleigh in the 12 Monkeys, who is the Mary Magdalene figure. James Cole, J.C., Jesus Christ, who comes back in time to save mankind from the deadly virus. She's the only one who will believe him. Again, the sacred feminine character. So yeah, I mean, the female is a very important part of cinema. I talk about it in both aspects. I talk about the negative and the positive elements of the role of the female archetype in cinema. It's a whole chapter in the book, actually.
What about the Seven Seals too? That's definitely a woman that dies to give up her life to let everybody else live.
What movie is this?
Seventh Seal.
Oh, I don't know it. I've never seen it.
Oh, that would be a good one.
No, don't know it.
Yeah.
Don't know that one.
Check that one out. But it obviously,
oh yeah, definitely. I'll make sure I look it up.
It talks about the seven seals that have to be broken, and the fact that the gift is empty, and in order to fill the gift, would she give her life to save? She's pregnant, of course, and
is this the one with Demi Moore? Is this the one with Demi Moore?
I'm not sure if Demi Moore is in it or not.
I think if it's Demi Moore, I think I've seen it, but it's been years since I've seen it. But I think I know the movie you're talking about.
Okay. But it's fascinating because they show what happens when the seals are broken, and priests are all over the place looking for where's the next seal and what's the next seal, and somebody moves into her garage who happens to be the one that's breaking the seals, and she's pregnant, and I guess at the very end she's rushed into delivery, and the question is, will you die so they can live? And she says yes, and she does die, and the baby lives, and the gift is filled, and life goes on. But
right.
Good movie, but again, a sacred female. How about in like the Exterminator, the mother of John Connor?
Oh, of course, John Connor, J.C., Jesus Christ, again, the savior of mankind. Again, same sort of character. The female figure, and again, she's more of the warrior, type. You'll find this with Ellen Ripley as well. But yeah, John Connor is the Christ savior figure in Terminator, and again, John Connor, J.C., same initials. the Christ-like savior of mankind from the machines, the Terminator. And she's the mother of the of the savior figure. Again, same sort of themes. You'll find this again in the first 3 Star Wars movies with Shmi Skywalker, who is the virgin mother of Anakin. And Anakin Skywalker is again another, he may not have the initials JC, but is another Christ-like figure, the savior of the Jedis, which he ultimately becomes by destroying the Emperor at the end of Episode 6. Is rejected by temple elders, wants to stop people from dying, storms the temple, is dead and resurrected as Darth Vader. Same themes over and over again.
And yet we don't notice it really, and that's what fascinates
you don't notice
me.
It.
We don't really notice the story that's being told to us over and over and over again. And it's fascinating when you really sit back and analyze it. When you know what the different templates are and the different archetypes are, you really can in a lot of movies. I mean, there are some stupid movies like
right.
I don't know, Animal House that you can't, but or maybe you can. I don't know.
You actually have a god. You actually have the god Loki in Animal House, but that's about it. This is a loser character who fails upwards. He turns up from time to time. But no, you're right. I mean, one of the motivations, one of the real strong motivations of me writing this book was to point this stuff out. And like I said, what I kind of did was. When I was writing Royal Arch of Enoch, when you're studying this mysticism, the occult, mythology, Kabbalah, alchemy, Hermeticism for 20 years, and you write a book on it, you will start seeing it, in the movies. I mean, and when you have the trained eye, I mean, it really starts to stand out. I mean, it's not even like, I mean, if I'm just watching a movie in the background or something, I'm not half paying attention to it. That's one thing. But when you become aware of this material and you know what to look for, it'll really stand out. It won't even become concealed anymore. It'll really start standing out like a sore thumb. And you'll become really cognizant of the fact that these movie makers are doing this intentionally. A great example of this, and this is something I talk about in Cinema Symbolism, but I'm really going in depth with this in Cinema Symbolism II, is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Which is just so overwrought with replication and alchemical themes and transition of the self. And I mean, it's all there. I mean, and he just that movie just repeats itself from the start to finish. I mean, it's the same replication of numbers and words and color schemes. And it's just such a fascinating study. It's probably one of the out of all the movies I've analyzed, it's probably one of the most detailed studies I've ever done is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. You have the whole alchemical transition going on from normalcy to psychopath, and then what Kubrick really does is he embeds numbers and repetition in that movie ad nauseum. What he's symbolizing is the endless repetition and the repetitive reincarnation cycle that's going on inside the Overlook Hotel, and it's such a fascinating study. I finished the portion on The Shining, but I mean it is you will just sit back and be like, whoa, when you become aware of just how pedantic he went to repeat things and repeat numbers over and over and over and over again in that movie. I mean, it's really incredible. Darren Aronofsky is another one. In Cinema Symbolism, I took on Black Swan, which is just so overwrought with so many different themes. In fact, that movie is so overloaded with occult and alchemical symbolism, I actually had to cut it in half, and I'm actually doing the alchemical interpretation of that movie in Cinema Symbolism II, and you'll find this exact same theme in The Shining. But yeah, Kubrick's The Shining, it's just a fascinating study of just repetition, repetitive cycles, color schemes, And it's probably one of my favorite it's probably one of my all-time favorite movies. And it's in Cinema Symbolism II. I'm working on it now. I talk about it briefly in Cinema Symbolism, but just a great study in symbolism. Well,
even in the Superman series and even in the Batman series, I can see the different archetypes being seen, and it's the more you look at it, it's almost a game. All right, I see this. Where's the other one? Where's this one? Where there has to be, an antagonist. Right. There has to be a wisdom or a wise man like Alfred the butler, and it to me has been. It's woken me up a lot. I have to go look at all of these movies all over again because I miss a lot.
I've used this line before. Where every time I watch a Darren Aronofsky movie, I feel like I'm playing a game of chess against Bobby Fischer because his movies are just so overwrought with esoteric symbolism. Yeah, you're right. Batman comes out of mythology. This ties into the concept of the shadow self, which is Batman. The darker self, where the guy is, Bruce Wayne by day, but the darker character comes out at night. And, of course, he is counterbalanced by even a darker version of himself, the Joker. You have Two-Face, who is the god Janus. Catwoman is Lilith, who is just a darker version of Sophia. You've got Batman being the Christ-like savior of Gotham City. I mean, in fact, he's often referred to as the savior of Gotham City. Superman, good grief. The only begotten Son sent to Earth to use supernatural powers to save mankind from itself. In Superman 78 with Christopher Reeves, he resurrects the dead in Lois Lane. In the one they just came out with, it's not even esoteric. It's overt. You have Superman. This is the one that came out about a year or 2 years ago, where Kevin Costner and Russell Crowe were in it, where where Superman is on Earth for 33 years, and then it's when he has to save Earth from General Zod, the darkness, and of course Jesus was 33 when he was crucified. You will have Superman flying around all over the place in that movie, cruciform in front of the sun. And in fact, Russell Crowe actually even tells you this. He says, you will make them one with the sun. I mean, again, it's the solar archetype, the Christ-like savior, the sun god, who has the mystical, supernatural abilities to save mankind. Yeah, Superman is another Christ-like archetype, coming down from the heavens to save mankind from itself. Again, same theme, same theme, different names, basically.
My God, do you ever watch a movie and just enjoy it?
Yeah, well, this is my way of enjoying them. If it's just a movie and I'm just watching it passively, yeah. But when I'm doing these books and I'm writing on this, I'll tell you, I sit there. For starters, I will say this: I have to watch these movies at least 3 or 4 times. And like I said, even on the 4th or 5th viewing, I'll miss stuff. The Black Swan material is so overwhelming, I'm actually doing a whole other portion of it in Cinema Symbolism II. Aronofsky snuck a couple things by me in that I'm putting in Cinema Symbolism II. I didn't realize it until Cinema Symbolism I was going to press, and I thought, oh my God, well, it's too late now, I can't put it in, so I'll put it in Cinema Symbolism II. Yeah, but Aronofsky snuck a couple things by me. But when I'm watching these movies, if I'm just watching it passively in the background and I don't have my symbolic quote-unquote eyeglasses on, no, I enjoy it, but I really enjoy it, the challenge of trying to find this stuff. And I literally sit there with a notepad in front of me for I need my remote because I am constantly moving backwards and forwards in these movies. Things that can happen early on will be put up in the end or later on. Where you may have missed it early on, a reference to something that turns up later. So then I'm like, oh my God, I got to go back to chapter so and so and see if
the other place where you haven't mentioned it, but I'm sure it's there, is in Sherlock Holmes.
Well, I talk about Holmes briefly. Conan Doyle was a Freemason. And you'll find some esoteric themes in his works. Of course, the Hound of the Baskervilles, the demonic hound haunting Dartmoor. This turns up in the Omen 3 with the demonic hound in the castle in Dartmoor. You have the adventure of the Sussex vampire, where you have the psychic vampire attacking people. He's not actually drinking their blood; he's draining their psychic energy, or psychic or spiritual energy, I guess is the best way for me to say it. So yeah, I mean, Conan Doyle was very versed in the esoteric. I mean, his involvement with spiritualism is very well documented. And you'll find some esoteric themes in the Sherlock Holmes works, vampirism, demonism in Hound of the Baskerville. In Dartmoor in England is home to a lot of, or at least allegedly home to a lot of supernatural activity. You will find this in the Third Omen movie, where Damien Thorne traps the priests on Dartmoor and uses demonic power. And of course, you'll find this in Sherlock Holmes. He says, "Don't go out into the moors. This is where evil is exalted." So hence, in Omen 3, Damien Thorne, when he's hanging around in Dartmoor, has extra power, I suppose, because he's really, powerful by killing off the priest assassins in Omen 3. But yeah, and then in the one Sherlock, it's not based on Conan Doyle. I talk about it in Cinema Symbolism, the one that came out a couple years ago with Robert Downey Jr., where you have the Secret Society guy, the Aleister Crowley Golden Dawn guy trying to take over the world, Black something or another is the character's name. It was the first Sherlock Holmes movie with Robert Downey, where there was the Secret Society, Golden Dawn-like secret society, Victorian secret society that was hell-bent on taking over the world, and the guy was using magic and sorcery. I mean, obviously an Aleister Crowley-like, figure. I talk about that in Cinema Symbolism. So yeah, I mean, you'll find that character turn up from as well. But yeah, I talked about some of the stuff going on in Sherlock Holmes in Cinema Symbolism.
You use a lot of the very current movies, but Vincent Price did a whole bunch of them that were very, very much occultish, and I want to say that they dealt with Egyptian magic and mystery and stuff like that, and it's been around for a very long time, and the fact that you can pinpoint it in so many of the current movies, and current within the last 20 years, I'm sure it's always been there. But the more and more profound they get, the more and more you wonder, are they trying to wake us up? Is there something going on here? I mean, let's just take it a step further. All of this, this is a pattern. This is how things work. Can you apply it to your own life? Does it apply to your life? Who's your Dumbledore? Who's your, pal that's always there? I mean, is this something that we can, bring it into our own lives and help us to understand a process or a place we are in our own evolution?
I suppose that's one way of looking at it. I've never really viewed it as that way. My take on it is, when it comes to the symbolism in movies, but I mean, what is it? Art imitates life. So, you will definitely, I'm sure, we've all had teachers and people in our lives that, were somewhat archetypical. I guess, even ourselves, we all sort of, incorporate or incarnate different portions of the archetype, or the archetypes, I should say. We all have the conscious ego. We all have, what's the line? Everybody casts a shadow, so we all have our darker sides too. So yeah, I mean, it's all part of our present life. Art imitates life, and I really see it. My take on it in the very end is just basically, if you're aware of it, you'll see. Read. My take on it is I wanted to present the material because I wanted people to be aware of this material, because I know I was aware of it, and I wanted to share this material because it's like you said, you'll watch these movies with a different light once you become aware of what you're really looking at. and look for the symbolism and things like that. I mean, because it's definitely there. I mean, and it's fun to see. I mean, just on a lighter note, I mean, it's like a challenge coming up with this stuff. And like I said, I sometimes feel like I'm playing a game of chess against these guys because it's there in some cases, and you just go to see what levels they'll go to incorporate it and veil it in films. But like I said during the show, to me, a lot of it is with the symbolism. It's really just transforming the movie into a piece of mythology, which I think they've been very successful at. Hollywood is literally printing money off this material, so they've been very successful at it. But yeah, I mean, life imitates art, imitates life. So you can find this stuff going on in your own lives in reality, and you'll find it on the big screen as well. They parallel each other, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank you because I really have pumped you dry almost. And
well, that's all right. I enjoyed being here.
I so appreciate talking with you about all of this because it's another facet to all of this stuff that's out there that so often we casually, just pass by and we don't understand that there are always deeper messages beneath the surface, and perhaps we have to be a little more attentive to things that happen in our life, to the ways that we enjoy our free time, and the messages that are being sent to us subliminally. And you've gone through all of the wonderful material you've gone through, and the other thing that they do with movies is, products pay huge amounts of money. Apple does, so that when the movie shows and they're using Apple computers, people kind of click that into their subconscious. Well, if they use Apple, maybe I should look at Apple too. So it's another thing that is just another way of using the movies to sway society, and I don't think they've done it as much as they probably will in the future, but it's fascinating, and I am so grateful to you for being a good sport and letting me talk about the movies instead of the Masonic stuff, which I will get educated on so I understand a lot better.
Well, for starters, let me say thank you, Barbara, for having me on. I thought it was a great show. Thank you for having me on Nightlight. Could I just give out my website real quick?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah, well, just again, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I thought it was a great show. We did some Masonic stuff, so that's good. And like I said, the movie book's out, so I certainly want to hype that. If you liked what I said tonight and you're interested in my books, the easiest way to get them is through my website, which is www.robertwsullivaniv.com. That's Robert W. Sullivan with two L's, the letter I, the letter V.com. My name is Robert W. Sullivan with a fourth, so I use the Roman numeral letters IV. If you go there are links to buy the book. You can buy the signed copies through my publisher. It's in the ebook format. It's in Kindle, Amazon, Nook, Barnes & Noble. They're a lot cheaper than the paperback, so if you want the ebooks and want to start reading it right now, you can get those. There's links to buy the books there, links to all my social media, Twitter, Facebook, like pages for all my books. There's a YouTube channel link where you can go watch some videos I produced on this material and listen to other radio shows I've been on. And like I said, just, links to all my social media, links to buy the book, www.robertwsullivaniv.com, all connected, all lowercase. If you like what I was talking about tonight, check out both my books. They're out right now. Signed copies can be purchased through my publisher, and the books are in all ebook format: Amazon Kindle, Barnes & Noble, Nook, and it's on the Apple iBookstore as well. And thank you, Barbara, for having me on. I sincerely appreciate it. I thought it was a great show.
It was a great show, and I want to thank Mark Eddy for putting us together. And I'm going to have you back. I'm going to do more homework, and I'm going to have you back on. So,
well, I'd love to come back on.
Yeah, no, I'm not done with you. So, so thank you again, and thank you everybody for being here. I will be on again at midnight with Jen Young for another Nightlight show. So take a snack, get a break, take a shower, and come on back then. Thanks again, Robert, and good night.